Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're having a wonderful week, like always, a wonderful weekend. Today, I'm finally ranking Britney Spears' entire discography for the first time. I'll be ranking all 9 of her studio albums from 1999 to the year 2016, starting with Baby One More Time up until Glory. I did listen to all her albums on this channel. I did first listen videos, reaction videos, and album review videos for all her albums. And now, a perfect way to kind of wrap up this Britney Spears discography journey is to finally rank all her albums. And I did put a lot of thought into this ranking. I didn't just sit down for 10 minutes and decide, okay, that's number 2, that's number 6, that's number 8, that's number 4. I really did put a lot of thought into the placements of each and every one of these albums. Now, I will say I was a little curious, so I jumped onto, I don't know, Reddit and YouTube just to see how other people were ranking her albums. And let me tell you, there are many different variations of how people ranked her albums, but in general, many people did rank the same album in last place, and many people kind of ranked the top 2 the same way. So that kind of did change from ranking list to ranking list, but in general, I want to say the middle part towards the end of each ranking list did vary from person to person. Now, as I go from album to album on this list, I will also give you my top 2 favorite songs from each album, and I will also give you my least favorite song from each album. Now, as I was going through the ranking of her albums in my head, there were 4 albums in particular that didn't move a single place, so I didn't shuffle them around, I didn't end up moving them up or down on the list, they stayed exactly where they were the entire time, and that is the top 3 on my list, as well as the album in last place, which is unfortunately Glory. I'm totally kidding, it is not Glory. That was fun. Anyway, no, it's Britney Jean. Shocker, not really. I mean, Britney Jean, what is there to say about Britney Jean? I mean, honestly, there isn't a lot to say about Britney Jean because Britney Jean isn't a memorable album, in my opinion. I almost never go back to this album at all. I hate the production on this album, and I'm an EDM guy. I love EDM music so much, but I just find the production on this album to be very jarring, and it's like nails on a chalkboard. There are a couple highlights on the album, but I can't stand listening to it. I think Britney sounds awful on this album. She is heavily auto-tuned to the point where she sounds like a robot, and I just find a lot of the songs to be very annoying. I will also say that I do enjoy the track Work Bitch, track number 2, but it's definitely my least favorite lead single from a Britney album. Now, when it comes to my favorite 2 tracks from the album, I would probably pick Work Bitch and Passenger. Perfume also is in my top 3, but I would rather listen to Passenger over Perfume. I'll even go as far as say that Passenger might be my favorite song from the album. I don't know why I love this song so much, but I just remember listening to this album for the first time back in 2013 when it was released, and Passenger was always a track I went back to all the time, even to this day. I personally do feel like Passenger should have been a single. It definitely could have been the 3rd single from the album. And when it comes to my least favorite track from the album, I mean, where do I start? But if I had to choose my least favorite song, it would probably be track number 4, It Should Be Easy, featuring will.i.am. I think the reason why I dislike this song so much is more so because of what they did to her voice. It's like nails on a chalkboard. I can't stand this song at all. I mean, honestly, this is the sort of album you would play at 4 a.m. when you're already drunk off your ass and you're about to pass out, and then this album starts playing and you dance to it for a couple minutes mindlessly and then you just pass out on the floor. I always got the impression that Britney Jean was Femme Fatale's less talented, more annoyed little twin sister. So now we're gonna move on to number 8 on my list, and this is where the shuffling of the albums started, with number 8 on my list up until number 4. But in at number 8, I finally decided on Oops, I Did It Again. Now, the reason why I placed Oops, I Did It Again in at number 8 on my list is more so because of the second half of the album. I love the first 7 songs on the album, ending with track number 7, Lucky. But then starting with track number 8, One Kiss From You, I just feel like the album starts to go downhill and it's not as memorable as the first half. I do like track number 9, Where Are You Now? I think it's a great power ballad from Britney. But then track number 10, 11, 12, I just don't find those tracks as memorable as the first half, and I almost never go back to the second half of this album. So that's probably the main reason why I placed this album so low on the list. But the first half of the album, in my opinion, is great. And my two favorite songs from the album are obviously Oops, I Did It Again and Stronger. Stronger is one of my favorite Britney Spears songs of all time. Also, Don't Go Knocking on My Door is a great song. I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Don't Let Me Be the Last to Know. What You See Is What You Get. And obviously Lucky are great songs. And I feel bad for placing this album so low on the list, but that's just a testament to Britney's discography. She has so many great pop albums that it really is difficult for me anyway to rank her albums. So even though I ranked this album quite low on the list, it's still a great Britney album. It's a classic sounding Britney album. Now in at number 7 on my list is Baby One More Time, her debut album from 1999. And let me tell you, this is probably one of the greatest debut pop albums from any pop artist of all time. And I won't lie, I do go back to this album quite a bit. It's a very bubblegum pop album. It's very innocent and sweet, and it reminds me of my childhood. There are tracks on this album that just take me back to my youth, before I was a teenager, and it was a great time in my life. I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of nostalgia when doing any ranking list, whether that be for movies or music or books. That's something I really did try to push past when doing this ranking list. I tried to really put her albums into perspective, and I just tried to block out any nostalgic feelings I had for the albums, because it would have been very easy for me to place this album higher up on the list because it reminds me of my childhood and good memories, but I didn't want to do that. There are a lot of great pop songs on here, and let me tell you, her voice sounds great on this album. That's also why I go back to this album quite a bit, is because of her voice. It's so pure and innocent and sweet, and there are so many catchy hooks and melodies on this album. But I find that as I get older, I just can't relate to this album as much as I once did. I'm not a teenager anymore, unfortunately. I still like listening to it, but it's very bubblegum pop. It's very sweet and innocent, and I'm just not in that mindset anymore. So that's why I decided to rank this album lower on the list. It's a great debut pop album, but she definitely put out better work after this album. And I totally forgot to tell you guys what my least favorite song from Oops, I Did It Again is. And it would have to be Dear Diary. Now, when it comes to my favorite two tracks from Baby One More Time, I would probably have to choose, of course, Baby One More Time and Sometimes. And my least favorite song from the album is unfortunately The Beat Goes On. Even though I did choose Baby One More Time and Sometimes as my two favorite songs from the album, there are other songs from this album that I love just as much. You Drive Me Crazy and Born to Make You Happy, From the Bottom of My Broken Heart, I Will Be There, and Deep in My Heart, and I'll Never Stop Loving You, On Goodbye. I mean, there are a lot of great, solid, bubblegum pop songs on this album. Even Soda Pop. Don't get me started on Soda Pop. Oh my god, I love Soda Pop so much. Now, moving right along, in at number 6, we have Circus. Now, I'm surprised and not surprised that I ranked this album so low on the list. You'd think I would rank it higher because of nostalgia, but like I said already, I'm trying to push past nostalgia, and I don't want nostalgia to influence how I rank her albums. This album was released in 2008, so it takes me back to when I was a teenager. I graduated high school. I remember buying this album and religiously listening to it, and a lot of great memories associated with this album. But putting the album into perspective with the rest of her discography, there are definitely albums, in my opinion, that are a lot stronger. And going back to the album a few more times in preparation for this ranking list, I do find the album, I don't know, in my opinion, I find the album a little annoying. There's just something about this album that doesn't resonate with me as much as some of her other albums. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of great pop songs on this album. It's a Britney album. I just find a lot of the songs on this album to be not as memorable as songs that were released from her past albums before Circus and albums released after Circus into the 2010s. It's just we're at the point now where we are ranking a good Britney pop album against a great Britney pop album. So it's not like we're ranking bad Britney albums against good and great Britney albums. It's the good Britney albums against the great Britney albums. And in my opinion, Circus is just a good Britney album. I like the production on the album. The production, in my opinion, is the highlight. A lot of quirky sounds. This is a quirky album. And my two favorite songs from the album are probably Womanizer and Unusual You. But I also love Circus, Out From Under, Kill the Lights, Shattered Glass, If You Seek Amy. And my least favorite song from the album is My Baby, unfortunately. It's a very sweet song. It's about her kids, so I feel bad for choosing this song as my least favorite, but I just never listened to it. So now we're gonna move on to number 5 on my list, and I decided to rank Glory in at number 5. Now, originally I wanted to rank Glory higher up on the list because there are a lot of Britney fans who love Glory, and they rank it in the top 3 of Britney albums. Some of you even rank Glory as your number 1 favorite Britney album, and a lot of you say that the holy trinity of Britney albums is In the Zone, Blackout, and Glory. So what I did is I went back to Glory multiple times in preparation for this ranking list, and Glory just doesn't grab me as it does a lot of you, unfortunately. And I do like Glory. I love Glory. Considering this is 2016, this is what, 17 years into her career, she put out an album like Glory. It's great. It's a great pop album. I love the production. It's very dreamy. I love the atmosphere of this album. It's very moody at times as well, but I don't know, I don't find myself going back to this album as much as I probably should. Now, I do think that Glory is just a little bit overrated. It's a good Britney album. In my opinion, it's just not a great Britney album. And this goes back to what I said about Circus, how we're now at the point where it's kind of difficult to rank her albums. So we're not separating the bad Britney albums from the good Britney albums. We're now separating the good Britney albums from the great Britney albums. So, in my opinion, this is a good Britney album. It's just not a great Britney album. But I still love listening to this album. I was actually listening to it last night when I was having a bath. It was a very therapeutic experience. I put in some bath salts and some bubble bath. I lit a candle and I decided to put on some Glory by Britney Spears, and it was a great experience. Now, when it comes to my favorite tracks from Glory, I would probably have to pick Make Me and Slumber Party, and my least favorite is Private Show. Honestly, I can't stand Private Show. I find it really annoying, and I always skip over that song. Now, some of the other highlights on the album that I really enjoy going back to are tracks number 1, Invitation. I also like track number 6, Just Love Me. Clumsy is a lot of fun to listen to. I also really like Just Like Me and Love Me Down, Hard to Forget Ya. Also, it's interesting because she also does a bit of Spanglish on track number 14, Change Your Mind, No C's Cortez. And If I'm Dancing, track number 16 is great. And track number 17, oh my god, I forget how to pronounce this. It's French. Sorry if I mispronounce it. Coupe Electrique. Oh, I love that track so much. And Glory is the album that keeps on giving because there were 3 more songs added to the album years after its release. For example, last year in 2020, Mood Ring was added, also Swimming in the Stars and Matches, and that was a collaboration she did with the Backstreet Boys. So let's move along to number 4 on my list, with Femme Fatale. Now, I am gonna say that my opinion on this album might be a bit biased because I am an EDM guy. I love my electronic dance music. It's one of my favorite genres, so it's typically what I listen to. So that's why I probably ranked this album a bit higher. Like I said multiple times already, I am really trying to push past nostalgic feelings for some of these albums. And Femme Fatale is a nostalgic album for me because it takes me back to my young adult years, the early 2010s. But I tried to ignore that. And I really tried to put this album into perspective as to what I like in a Britney album. And honestly, this is one of my favorite Britney albums. It's definitely a high energy album. I do feel like it's one of her most fun albums. It's a great time to listen to this album. It's a party to listen to this album. And I know some of you call this album generic. It's just a generic EDM club album, which I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't find this album generic sounding by any means. It sounds like a Britney album. So because it sounds like a Britney album, it doesn't sound generic. Yes, it is heavily influenced by EDM, but at the end of the day, to me, this is still a Britney album. And if I had one criticism about the album, I feel like the album is a little inconsistent when it comes to the flow, track to track. There are times where I'll be listening to this album and I'll just be skipping over songs just to get to the next one. So this isn't an album that I can play track to track without skipping songs. I have to skip songs when I listen to this album, unfortunately. But it's probably more so because it's so high energy and it gets your blood pumping that you just want to get to the next song. This album is kind of like empty calories, in my opinion. There isn't a lot of meaning behind what she's singing about and the lyrics. She's not very vulnerable on this album. She isn't really singing about her struggles and her personal life, what she's going through, as much as she was on some of her prior albums. Now, if I had to pick my two favorite songs from the album, I would probably choose Till the World Ends and Hold It Against Me. And my least favorite song is probably He About to Lose Me. I almost never listen to that song. But overall, there are so many other great songs like I Wanna Go. Track number 3, I find myself skipping over track number 3 quite a bit. I do like How I Roll and Drop Dead Beautiful, Seal It With a Kiss. I'm not the biggest fan of Big Fat Bass with will.i.am, but I still do listen to it. Trouble for Me, Trip to Your Heart, Gasoline, Gasoline, And there's also Criminal, which Criminal is a song that I originally didn't really listen to a lot when I first started listening to this album back in 2011, but it's a song that's definitely grown on me, and it's probably one of my favorites from the album now. And I did look up the ratings of Britney's albums, and it says that Femme Fatale is actually one of Britney's highest rated albums. So we have finally made it to the top 3 of my ranking list, and in at number 3 we have Britney, her third album from 2001. Now, this actually surprised me. When I did my first listen video to her Britney album, I wasn't expecting to rank this album so high up on my list, but when I sat down to do the first draft of my ranking list, Britney fell in at number 3 instantly, and I'm a little shocked by that because I wasn't expecting to rank this album as high as I did. Out of her first 3 albums, I do feel like this is her strongest between Baby One More Time, Oops, I Did It Again, and Britney. It's like Baby One More Time is her as a freshman in high school, and then Oops, I Did It Again is her sophomore year, and now Britney is her graduation. She's now entering college, and then In the Zone is her college years. So that's kind of the metaphor and story I use when I think of her first 4 albums. It's kind of like her graduating from year to year in high school and then into college finally. And this is a very hot, steamy, sexy album, especially with tracks I'm a Slave for You, even, I don't know, like tracks Boys and Overprotected. I just think this is a great album, and it's a very consistent album as well. This is an album where I can listen to it track by track from beginning to end without being disappointed. So I think the first half is just as strong as the second half of the album, which is something I didn't experience when I listened to Oops, I Did It Again, unfortunately. It's also a classic Britney album. Just like Oops, I Did It Again and Baby One More Time, this is classic Britney. This is where she was becoming more confident in her body and her skin, and she was becoming more sexually liberated, and she was becoming more of a woman on this album. I'm Not a Girl, Not Yet a Woman, track number 4. So she was definitely in that interesting spot in her life where she was between girlhood, teenagehood, and womanhood. Now, I did say earlier in the video that a lot of Britney fans classify the holy trinity of Britney albums as In the Zone, Blackout, and Glory, but my own personal holy trinity of Britney albums would have to be Blackout, In the Zone, and Britney. And it's no coincidence that I chose those 3 as my top 3 Britney albums, In the Zone, Blackout, and Britney, because I also do feel like those 3 albums are also her most sexually liberated albums as well. Now, my 2 favorite tracks from the album are I'm a Slave for You and Overprotected. And my least favorite track is probably What It's Like to Be Me. I just find myself skipping over that song quite a bit. I also want to say that I love Lonely and I'm Not a Girl, Not Yet a Woman, Boys, Anticipating, which is a nice disco-influenced song. I'm not the biggest fan of I Love Rock and Roll, but I do listen to it. Cinderella is a great song as well. Let Me Be, Bombastic Love, That's Where You Take Me, When I Found You, I Run Away, Before the Goodbye. Even though I did choose What's Like to Be Me as my least favorite song, I would listen to it, but I do typically skip over that song. So we have finally made it to my top 2 favorite Britney albums of all time. And in at number 2, I have Blackout. Now, Blackout is another nostalgic Britney album for me. The 2 most nostalgic Britney albums for me anyway are probably Circus and Blackout, because they do take me back to high school. And in particular, Blackout, I was still in high school when this album came out, and I was going through a very dark time in my life. So I was actually able to relate to this album quite a bit because Britney was rebelling. We all know what she was going through during that time. And I remember watching the videos on TMZ and just blogs and websites. I just remember seeing the videos of her roaming the streets late at night in Los Angeles and Hollywood, going into convenience stores and just being a mess and shaving her head and just doing all these bizarre things. And then Blackout was released, and I was just able to relate to this album just because of what I was going through. Like I said, I was going through a dark time, so I could kind of connect to Britney. And honestly, I was kind of inspired by Britney during this era because, you know, she was using a stripper pole in her music video for Give Me More. And the black hair, which was a shock because we never really seen Britney with black hair before in the music video. And she was very rebellious and she was kind of doing her own thing and she was a hot mess. And I kind of looked up to that because of what I was going through, and I just wanted to rebel, and I saw her just so free and just doing whatever she wanted, so I was thinking, you know what, I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want. So obviously, she wasn't the best role model at the time for someone like myself, given her behavior. I was a little influenced by the way she was acting, you know? She was acting crazy, bizarre, weird, and that's what I wanted to do because, like I said, I was going through a dark time. I just wanted to rebel. I just wanted to break free and just do my own thing and say fuck you. So I kind of used Britney as the template of how I would live my life for the next, I don't know, few years. Also, whenever I listen to this album, I can't help but think of Chris Crocker's Leave Britney Alone video. I remember going on YouTube when that video was uploaded and just watching it all the time because I couldn't help myself. I was just laughing at it so much and it was hilarious. Oh, those were the early YouTube days. Also, I am very happy that I didn't start YouTube until 2018 because if I started YouTube in 2007 or 2008, I just would have been a hot mess. Now, a lot of people classify Blackout as Britney's magnum opus, her masterpiece, her best album ever, and I wouldn't disagree with that. It's a great pop album. And the fact that she released this album during one of the darkest moments of her life is just a testament to who Britney is, and she really turned her pain and her darkness into a work of art. It's definitely her darkest album, and this is a quintessential club album. It's the type of album you listen to when you're pre-gaming before you go to the bar. It's an album you listen to when you are at the bar, and it's an album you listen to when you come home from the bar. So it's a great album to dance to. It's a sexy album, and you just want to start stripping off your clothes when you listen to this album. You just want to be rebellious. You just want to be a badass when you listen to this album. Now, my favorite tracks from Blackout are probably Give Me More and Break the Ice. I also really enjoy Piece of Me. Radar is a grower. Initially, Radar wasn't really a song I listened to on the album when this album was released back in 2007, but it's definitely grown on me. I like it a lot more now than I did before. Also, Heaven on Earth, Get Naked, I Got a Plan. Yes! Freak Show, Toy Soldier, Hot as Ice, Ooh Ooh Baby. Oh, I love that song, Ooh Ooh Baby. What was that? Anyway, Perfect Lover isn't really a song I ever listened to. Perfect Lover and Why Should I Be Sad were typically songs I skipped over. Honestly, this is a pop masterpiece of an album. But we have made it to number 1 on my list, and I decided to choose In the Zone as my favorite Britney album of all time. I mean, Talk about not skipping any tracks. I mean, I don't skip any songs on this album. I can listen to this album from beginning to end. And it's a sexy album. It's a hot album. It's her sexiest album. It's her steamiest album. And I love the production on this album. This album just oozes sexuality. Now, I know a lot of people don't like track number one, Me Against the Music with Madonna, but I don't know, I actually like that track. It's definitely not one of my favorites on the album, but I still enjoy listening to it. Now, my favorite tracks from the album are Toxic and Breathe on Me. Yes, Breathe on Me, Breathe on Me, Breathe on Me. I love that song. But I also really enjoy Early Morning and Outrageous, Touch of My Hand. Yes, the hookup. Shadow, oh my god. Shadow is one of my favorite Britney ballads of all time, honestly. I do feel like track number 11, Brave New Girl, is a little out of place. I don't feel like Brave New Girl really fits in with the rest of the album production-wise. I feel like it's the black sheep. Oh, Every Time! I completely forgot about Every Time. It's the last track on the album, so that's why I totally forgot about it. Every Time is another one of my favorite tracks from the album, and again, just like Shadow, Every Time is one of my favorite Britney ballads of all time, if not my favorite Britney ballad. I mean, this is a Britney album I never get sick of. This is a Britney album I always go back to again and again. And of course, this album has her most successful and popular song ever, Toxic. If someone was to rank all of her songs, every single one of them, I imagine Toxic would always fall on top as number one. Toxic is honestly not just one of the best pop songs of the 2000s, but honestly, it's one of the best pop songs of the 21st century, and it's one of the best pop songs ever made. I do want to know, though, if there are some of you watching who think Toxic is overrated. Maybe some of you don't like Toxic as much as a lot of other people. So if you think Toxic is overrated, let me know in the comments. Nobody's gonna shame you for thinking that. I mean, if it's your honest opinion, tell me. I'm curious to know. Also, Blackout. Tell me if you also think Blackout is overrated, or maybe you think In the Zone's overrated. I would love to see your guys' ranking of Britney's albums in the comments, so please leave your ranking of Britney's albums in the comments below. So officially, I think that's all I wanted to say on the ranking of Britney's albums. Looking at the list in front of me, I'm very satisfied of how I ranked her albums. I did put a lot of thought into it, and I'm very satisfied. Would I, after doing this video, rearrange some of the albums after talking about them with you guys and thinking about them? No, honestly, I think I would leave it as is. I also want to hear your guys' opinions and ideas as to where Britney should go with her music next, with her next album. If she is to release a new album, we all know what she's going through right now, so we probably won't get a new Britney album for a couple years, a few years. We might not ever get another Britney album, but if she was to release another album, what do you want it to sound like? So thanks for watching, guys. You can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Twitter, you can message me, you can tell me other artists I should check out. I'm open to any artists for a decade. You can find me out music. I'm so tired, I'm out of breath, I'm out of saliva. I've been doing so much talking during this video that I can't even talk anymore. Okay, bye.